So back on Friday, a federal judge gave Donald Trump 2 weeks to basically erase his name from the Kennedy Center, where it never belonged in the first place. The judge blocked Trump's plans to shutter the Kennedy Center for what Trump had called a 2-year, quote, complete rebuilding. Trump was so mad, he posted twice about it on Saturday. He, of course, attacked the judge, called him a, quote, anti-Trump hater, and attempted to make the case for his own renovations and control of the Kennedy Center, control that Donald Trump declared one day earlier he would relinquish because the Kennedy Center, Trump said, is a, quote, failing institution. In reality, it was, of course, Trump's control and politicization of the institution that brought on mass layoffs and destruction and dozens of cancellations of performances, which are the lifeblood of the Kennedy Center. But now, according to the Associated Press, this ruling is bringing, quote, hope to artists who had been alienated by Trump's takeover. Joining our coverage, senior executive editor for Bloomberg Opinion, our political analyst Tim O'Brien, Congressman Crow and Claire are still here. So you've joined at the perfect moment, right? We've established that the corruption is catching up with Donald Trump. And I think there's so much evidence in public view from the weekend that Trump is absolutely out of his mind at all of these legal and political setbacks.
Because they're cutting to the core of who he is, and Donald Trump's corruption and how craven Donald Trump isn't just one facet of other things he's doing. It's central to who he is. He has always been this person, and he hasn't been held fully accountable for any of it. He still isn't. But at least you've had a little blip on the screen over the last couple of weeks of judges becoming more assertive. Unfortunately, Republicans who are on their way out of Congress becoming more assertive, but more assertive still. And he can't control any of that. And he's a megalomaniac, and he's a narcissist, and he's been putting his hands on all of these monuments because he wants to have a permanence in Washington that he probably won't have. And when you look at the Kennedy Center specifically, every president who has served didn't get monuments named to them, for them until they were out of office. And if you say Washington to Lincoln to FDR to Reagan, like consequential presidents, whether you agree with them in the specifics of what they did, I think they felt they were building something better and that they were serving the American people. None of that interests Donald Trump. What interests Donald Trump coming into office was what could he take out of it? How could he pad his ego, and how could he pad his wallet? And in the Kennedy Center, it is such a overt, like many recent things, but this particular act is such an overt effort on his part to associate himself with a president who served in a war. Donald Trump actively sought, I think, 5 in all deferrals so he wouldn't have to serve in Vietnam. And a president who died in the service of his country. Donald Trump would never die in the service of anyone else, ever. But he wants to be associated with that. And now he's been denied that, and he's doing what toddlers do. He's lashing out because he can't control the outcome.
What opportunities? I saw someone said, you should broadcast the removal of his name from the that there's already such a pent up desire to see the legal defeats restore some of these institutions. It feels like we're not at that part of the story yet. He still, to me, represents a pretty grave threat to our democracy. How do you view these legal defeats or legal setbacks?
Oh, absolutely, he's a threat. I mean, we are as a country in a zone of danger right now. Let's make no mistake about it. But at the same time, Donald Trump is a very weak and fragile person. It's why he projects strength all the time. It's why he wants to build all these monuments. It's what weak and fragile people do. If you're not strong and confident, if you need all these tangible illustrations of your power, right? When you're in the military, the toughest, strongest, most competent soldiers are usually the quiet ones, the quiet professionals. It's in fact the mantra of special operations. You don't talk about it. You don't have to pound your chest or prove anything to anybody else. So he's weak, and I think the weaker and more fragile he gets, actually the more dangerous he'll get. So we need to be more vigilant. But our first step needs to be to deliver for folks. Elections are about contrast. Governing is about a contrast, and we're trying to build a coalition right now. So what we have to do, if we get it into power, if the American people give us this opportunity, is to show that we are going to be relentlessly focused on their needs. Let's lower costs. Let's end this reckless war in Iran. Let's actually protect our military and our service members. Let's work towards balancing the budget. And that will speak stronger than anything else that removes the name of Donald Trump, although we will do that.
You do that like on a weekend. Claire, what opportunities do you see right now for Democrats?
Oh, I think there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody needs to stay focused on what Jason just was referring to and what we talked about at the top of the hour. We need to do what Ossoff did in that speech. It has to be about you, not about the Democrats. Frankly, the Democrats neither party is very popular right now.
For totally different reasons, though, right?
No, I think for totally different reasons, but also for the same reason, and that is dysfunction.
Right.
Most people are not paying close attention to everything. They just know nothing's working.
Right.
And they know, they're beginning to figure out that Donald Trump is, a con man and somebody who's good at marketing and not much else. But if we don't make it about them instead of us or even him, we will make a big mistake. And the discipline of doing that is hard because a lot of the base wants nothing more than red meat about how Donald Trump sucks. And so you've got to have enough discipline to stay on that message about the health insurance costs, about rural hospitals closing, about input costs for farmers.
He sucks at gas prices. How's that?
He sucks at gas prices, all of that. But if we have that discipline, I think we have an opportunity to have an election that is going to be striking in the results that could occur.
Yeah, it also feels like the debate of 8 years ago, is it democracy or the economy, it feels like it has been had, and people now see that anti-democratic practices where you don't listen to the electorate destroy an economy.